All right, in the last podcast, you got to count significant figures and round with significant figures. Now you get to calculate with significant figures. It's even more fun, if you can imagine. All right, here's some rules. We're going to want to write them down. Addition and subtraction. So addition and subtraction, and I'll bring the other ones up. Multiplication and division, you have two different rules when you're talking about significant figures. Addition and subtraction, you look at decimal places. You want the fewest number of decimal places from the values to match your answer. And with multiplication and division, you look at the fewest significant figures. And we're going to do some practice with these. But if we take an example for this, we have 28 plus 23.538 plus 24.68. So if I put that into my calculator, I get 77.218. And then if I look at the fewest decimal places, this has 1, this has 3, and this has 2. So I want my answer to have 1 and match that one. So my real answer would be 77.2 because that's rounded to the fewest decimal places to match that value. With multiplication and division, you look at significant figures. So if I take 3.2 times 3.65 times 2.05, I get 23.944 in my calculator, but fewest number of significant figures, this has 3 sig figs, this has 3, and this has 3, so my answer needs to have 3 as well, which means I've got to round it off right there, and since that's 44, the 9 stays as it is, so my real answer would be 23.9 centimeters cubed. So here we go, let's try some of these. Perform the following calculations and round your answer to the correct number of sig figs. So it's going to take me a second. If you don't have your calculator out yet, you should grab it. 43.2 plus 51 plus 48.7. I get in my calculator 142.9. And then I look at the least number of decimal places because I'm adding, and each of these have 1. And since my answer has 1, that is the correct answer. I don't need to do any rounding. All right, in this one we have 93.26 minus 81.14, and I get 12.12 in my calculator. And then if I look at decimal places, this has 2 and this has 2, and my answer has 2, so that is the answer. I don't have to do any rounding. All right, so 0.0487 plus 0.05834 plus 0.00483, and I get 0.11187. And if I look at the least number of decimal places, there's 4, more than 4, more than 4, so my answer should have 4, which means I have 1 extra here, so my answer should really be 0.111, and that 7 is going to round up the 8. So I'm going to go to 9. And that's your final answer for number 3. 4 through 6, we're getting to multiplication and division. So now we're looking for significant figures, not for decimal places. So 24 times 3.26. In my calculator, I end up with 78.24. This has 2 sig figs, and this has 3, which means my answer can only have 2. And if I round that to 2 significant figures, it comes out as 78. 53 times 1.53, and you get 81 point maybe 09. All right, significant figures, this one has 3 because that trailing 0 counts, there's a decimal place. And this one has 3, which means my answer can only have 3. That 9 will round up the 0 to 1, so your answer that you should record as your final answer would be 81.1. And lastly, you have 168 divided by 58. And you get a really long decimal, so I'm only going to write some of those numbers in there. Good enough. This number has 3 sig figs. This number has 2, which means my answer can only have 2. I'm going to take this and round it to 2 sig figs, and this 9 here is going to round up that 8, so I should record 2.9 as my final answer. And that's the end of podcast 1.6.